Welcome back to my channel, Zyrovex Animal, and thank you for joining today. We are talking about bison versus moose, and we will see what happens when two giant wilderness animals enter the same harsh environment where size, strength, and survival instincts matter most. So watch till the end and subscribe for more amazing wildlife comparisons and wildlife stories. Across cold forests, open plains, and river valleys, two enormous animals survive through completely different strategies. The bison depends on even paths create fewer problems because body structure supports difficult landscapes, unlike herd animals that depend more on group awareness. The moose relies heavily on observation, hearing, and understanding surroundings because isolated. Movement requires constant attention. Environmental conditions now slowly begin shifting advantages. Open spaces support momentum movement and group coordination, helping the bison maintain confidence, while wetlands, forest edges, and uneven terrain increase opportunities for the moose because tighter spaces reduce the benefits of group movement, meaning terrain quietly influences every possibility before direct encounters even become possible. The bison notices changes in nearby animal behavior. Birds move differently, movement patterns shift, and unusual sounds travel across open areas, immediately increasing awareness. Because experienced animals understand environmental signals, meanwhile, the moose detects heavier vibrations moving through ground and vegetation, causing stronger focus. Because larger movement near feeding routes always attracts attention. Strengths and weaknesses now become clearer. The bison carries endurance, herd support, powerful body mass, and incredible pushing force, making it extremely difficult to challenge directly, especially on open land. However, dense terrain limits movement flexibility. Meanwhile, the moose carries height, long legs, environmental adaptability, and strong defensive ability, but isolated movement reduces support, meaning each animal depends heavily on conditions around them. As afternoon slowly continues, distance between them naturally decreases, not because either searches for conflict, but because seasonal movement routes overlap. Valleys connect feeding grounds, and rivers attract wildlife. Vegetation still separates them. Terrain still creates barriers, yet instincts become stronger because deep across forests and open wilderness, two heavyweight survivors continue moving toward the same environment. Part 3. As evening slowly approaches, the wilderness begins changing because colder air and longer shadows alter movement patterns across forest valleys and open land. The bison continues moving steadily through wider spaces because open terrain still provides the best conditions for heavy movement. Powerful shoulders, thick fur, and strong endurance help maintain confidence, while herd awareness remains important because survival in wild environments often depends on recognizing unusual changes early. Closer to forest edges and marshy ground, the moose moves with slower, more careful steps because rough terrain naturally supports its movement style. Long legs carry enormous weight through uneven areas, while strong hearing and awareness constantly scan surroundings. Unlike herd animals that gain safety through numbers, the moose depends heavily on individual awareness because isolation requires greater attention to danger and environmental signals. The environment now creates even stronger differences. Open ground supports momentum, visibility, and herd coordination, helping the bison, while wetlands, trees, and tighter movement paths favor the moose because maneuverability becomes increasingly important. Terrain quietly decides advantages long before animals directly interact, and changing conditions constantly shift possibilities. The bison notices unusual silence. Near one section of open land, birds suddenly move away, and smaller animals avoid certain paths, immediately increasing caution. Because experienced animals trust environmental signals, posture becomes stronger, movement slows slightly, and observation increases. Because avoiding problems often works better than reacting late. Meanwhile, the moose senses stronger vibrations through ground and vegetation, causing attention to increase because larger nearby movement rarely goes unnoticed. Now, both giants exist inside the same wider wilderness area, separated only by distance, vegetation, and changing terrain, yet awareness continues growing. The bison carries herd instincts, immense body strength, endurance, and defensive confidence, while the moose carries environmental adaptability, powerful kicks, and superior movement. Through rough landscapes, this comparison becomes increasingly complicated because strengths belong to different environments rather than one simple advantage. As sunlight slowly disappears and colder air spreads across the landscape, movement becomes slower, observation becomes sharper, and instincts become stronger. Because uncertainty surrounds both animals, neither searches directly for confrontation, but both recognize through environmental signals that another large presence exists nearby. And deep across forests and open valleys, tension quietly continues building. Part 4. As darkness slowly spreads across forests, valleys, and open plains, the wilderness becomes more unpredictable because visibility decreases, sounds travel farther, and movement through rough terrain becomes harder. To judge, the bison remains closer to open areas where footing stays more reliable because stable ground supports heavy movement. Powerful shoulders, thick muscles, and herd awareness remain important, but nighttime increases uncertainty because large animals survive through caution as much as strength. The moose stays nearer to forest edges and uneven terrain because these environments naturally support movement. Long legs step through obstacles more easily, while strong hearing and awareness become even more valuable during low visibility. Unlike herd animals that benefit from group reactions, the moose depends heavily on reading environmental signals because individual survival requires constant attention. Environmental conditions now influence every possibility. Open ground still helps the bison maintain movement space and stronger positioning, while dense vegetation, marshy sections, and tighter pathways support the moose because maneuverability becomes more important when visibility decreases. Terrain now shapes decisions almost as much as physical power. The bison notices unusual movement patterns nearby and slows pace because experienced animals understand that unfamiliar sounds during darkness deserve caution. Stronger posture, controlled movement, and increased observation become survival tools. Meanwhile, the moose senses heavier ground vibrations and unfamiliar scents, causing alertness to rise because large nearby movement naturally attracts attention. Psychologically, both animals shift into higher awareness. The bison carries endurance, body mass, powerful movement, and defensive instincts, while the moose carries environmental knowledge, strong defensive ability, and adaptability. Neither benefits from unnecessary injuries because harsh wilderness conditions punish mistakes quickly and survival remains the highest priority. Eventually, awareness becomes undeniable. Both giants now recognize through sound, movement, and instinct that another powerful presence exists nearby. Distance continues, shrinking, observation increases, and tension reaches its highest point because deep inside the cold wilderness where open plains meet dense forests, two heavyweight survivors now stand closer than ever before. Part 5. As early morning light slowly spreads across forest valleys and open plains, the long buildup of tension finally reaches its highest point because both wilderness giants now clearly recognize another large presence nearby. The bison remains closer to open ground where movement stays easier because stable terrain supports momentum and positioning. Meanwhile, the moose stays nearer uneven terrain and forest edges because environmental familiarity creates confidence. Neither animal rushes because experienced survivors understand that unnecessary risks create serious consequences. The bison studies the surroundings carefully because herd animals survive through awareness as much as physical power. Enormous shoulders, powerful body mass, endurance, and defensive instincts create confidence, but rough terrain reduces movement efficiency. Meanwhile, the moose remains alert, using hearing, observation, and environmental understanding because isolated survival depends heavily on reading surroundings. Long legs, height, and strong defensive ability remain important advantages, especially near uneven landscapes. Now the distance between them becomes smaller than ever. Vegetation, rocks, and uneven ground separating two completely different survival systems. The bison notices movement near forest edges, immediately slowing because caution prevents mistakes, while the moose detects stronger ground vibrations, causing increased focus because large movement nearby always deserves attention, neither animal fully understands the intentions of the other, making uncertainty the strongest factor. Environmental conditions quietly decide possibilities, open spaces support momentum, visibility, and stronger positioning, helping the bison, while forests cover wetlands and rough ground naturally support the moose, meaning location changes advantages constantly. Neither animal completely controls every environment, and this shifting balance creates uncertainty. Eventually, instinct becomes stronger than confrontation because both animals recognize danger. Injuries create survival problems during harsh seasons, and unnecessary conflict wastes energy. Therefore, caution slowly replaces tension. The bison increases distance from tighter terrain, while the moose remains closer to familiar ground because nature often rewards awareness more than aggression. Many encounters between large animals end through positioning and avoidance rather than direct conflict. In the final comparison, the bison represents endurance, herd strength, and overwhelming physical power, while the moose represents adaptability, awareness, and environmental advantage. Neither becomes the permanent winner because terrain, timing, and conditions constantly shape outcomes. And this is what makes wildlife fascinating. Different animals survive through different strategies, and sometimes the greatest victory in nature is simply continuing the journey safely. Thank you for watching Zyrovex Animal, and subscribe for more wildlife comparisons and survival stories.